All right. Good evening, everybody. You're tuning in to Mystic Moon Cafe, and I'm one of the hosts, excuse me, Wendy. I've got Ramon and Seth Michael as a co-host this evening, and we're just gonna go and have a fun show now. Hi, guys.
Hello, everybody. Hello.
Hola.
Hello. Okay, where do we want to start? Seth, how are you
And,
doing today?
doing well. Thank you.
Good.
How about you?
Sure. You get I'm here. I'm doing all right. I woke up and got out of bed, so hey, that's a plus, right?
Yeah, definitely. You got a pretty cool background. If people aren't seeing it, it's a tree with a big star on it and snow. That's really
Isn't that
pleasant
fun?
background. Yeah, it's very nice.
It is. I like it. I figured I'd use it for the Yule, and then it was still on, and I went, yeah, I'll just go ahead and keep using it then.
Very cool.
Very, very good. All right. Well, I guess to sorry, there was somebody who I wanted to thank, and okay, Orlando Sanchez is a favorite fantasy fiction writer of mine, and he always lets me share my shows and everything, the events and what have you, on his big fan page. And I just wanted to say thank you. Anybody out there looking for a good, blow 'em up mage battle with hellhounds and all kinds of fun stuff, go check out Orlando's Montague and Strong Detective Agency, and it's on Facebook. He's a heck of a nice guy. He'll interact with you himself, and it's all good. So I just wanted to say thank you because he does help so much all the time. And there's that, right?
Yeah, that's
Hmm.
important.
Exactly. Yes. But this evening we are going to do some talking about shamanic healing, ancestral healing, throwing of some bones. I I'll keep Augie out of it because if I throw a bone, he's going to go after it. Um, but okay, well, shall we start? Roman, how are you doing this evening? How's everything going?
I am doing really well.
Good.
Keeping
Glad to hear
busy,
it.
doing a lot of readings, doing a lot of healing work.
Hmm. I do a lot of reading too, but it's books that people want me to look over, information to go
Good one.
through. And if the one for our guest comes, this Wednesday's guest is from Kansas City, and she's written a book on Kansas City hauntings and history. And,
Oh, wow.
we had a lot of mafia types back in the day, and the Union Station massacre, and just all kinds of interesting things. And I wanted to go down to the graveyard where a lot of these gangster types are interred, but I'm not going to go by myself. I don't think it's just not in a good neighborhood anymore. Once upon a
The
time, it was
living.
great,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
you got to be aware of the living more.
exactly, yes. But I've lost myself here. Where am I?
It sounds fun, though. It sounds like a great guest coming up and
Oh yeah, that's Becky
very
Ray.
interesting.
Ghosts to Go Go. That's going to be a lot of fun, and I've got Roman's friend coming on the 30th.
What
Um,
topic is that going to be?
that is going to be crystals, and oh, she gave me a lead in, and it was really good. But it's basically, getting to know the crystals, getting to know yourself with the crystals, and just a whole bunch of different things we talked about. And we will probably have a series, and that is Rand. What's Ramon? What's her name?
Micah.
Micah. Thank you.
Micah Rand from
Micah
Silver Moon
Rand.
Medicine.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I know her.
Oh, you do.
Yeah, she goes to
Cool.
the Oregon Ghost Conference
She said she
often.
goes to a lot of them.
Yeah, she does
Cool.
go to many.
Cool.
Yeah, she has a booth at the LGC in Port Gamble every year over
Hmm.
here in the
Well, I
Pacific
knew,
Northwest.
and she was what, president of the Pagan Pride there for
Yeah,
quite a while.
yeah, I
If
forgot
I'm,
about that.
yeah, unless I'm mistaken, I believe that's what she told me. You have to
Excellent,
excuse
excellent
me.
guest.
Yes.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Yeah. That was kind of my take on it. So, and I thank Roman again for introducing us and getting my attention. All right.
Cool.
I'm trying to find my live page in case anybody's there and wants to chat or anything.
Oh,
Um,
okay. I forgot to
oh,
look
here
on
we
that
go.
too.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And we'll go to there. And then I have to turn the sound off on that part. Hi, Cindy. Hi, Alexi. We have people in chat, so that's always fun and good.
Oh, good. Okay, I'll help with
Mhm.
that too.
Yeah, I wasn't really just, bringing names out of thin air to say hello.
Mm-mm.
Anyway, well, shall we start the discussion, Roman?
Okay.
Kind of gone through the little bit I wanted to put out there, so
Well, my name is Roman Delgado. I am a shamanic practitioner, a shamanic healer. I have a strong background in folk magic to include Brujería, Curanderismo, and Southern Conjure. I also have a lot of background
Okay.
on healing modalities, particularly energy healing, to include Reiki, crystal healing, aromatherapy, massage, and a whole bunch of other stuff. My main focus in my shamanic healing practice is the work of ancestral healing, which takes the form of unraveling generational curses. I do use divination as a form of diagnosis of what is really going on spiritually as with my clients. It is basically to let me know what type of shamanic illness we're dealing with and what type of healing is needed.
cool. Very good. Now, how long have you been doing this?
Well, for me, shamanism is an interesting story, actually. I have what most anthropologists would count as being a traditional initiation into shamanism as a child. So it has been a lifelong thing. Traditional shamans and sorcerers both, because they're two sides of the same coin. One of them harms, the other one heals. My family, most of them were sorcerers. My grandmother was a curandera, she was a healer, she was a shaman. When I was really little, I was really, really, really sick for a really long time. And my aunts and my uncles that were really wealthy took me to see the best doctors all over Mexico, and none of them could tell me what was wrong with me. Then one day when I was about 4 or 5 years old, there was a very bad storm and I had a really high fever to the point in which I was dying from that fever. And no doctor could come see me because of the storm, and they could not get me to a hospital because of the storm. And at one point I remember dying and exiting my body. And behind me was the darkness of the grave. It was the place of the ancestors where the ancestors rest. And above me was this brilliant light. And from the light came one of the saints that my family works with. And she looks at me and goes, "You can work for me for the rest of your life, or you can die right now. The choice is yours." And that's how that conversation began. And that's how my path got started. I had had other traditional shamanic initiatory experiences that I keep to myself out of respect for the spirits. I had some minor training with my grandmother as a child. She passed away when I was 7 years old, so I did not get to have that much training with her. But as an adult, I gobbled up as much knowledge as I can on shamanic healing with the Foundation for Shamanic Studies, which is Core Shamanism. I studied Reiki, I studied crystal healing, aromatherapy, massage, and as much of other modalities of healing that I could to give myself the opportunity to be a more rounded healer.
Very nice. That sounds like a very, very detailed background in all things. I'm going to say occult because I don't really have a better one. Mysticism, perhaps. Um, but oh, and you can throw Reiki to me anytime. My weather shoulder's been going off, and donations are always accepted.
Okay.
Ah,
Ramon, where do you work out of?
I work out of a store in Tacoma, Washington, in University Place to be precise, called Mystic Sanctuary.
And then do you do Zoom and phone sessions as well?
I was doing phone sessions with a telephone service, like a psychic hotline, but we started having some very serious technical issues with it. So I am in the middle of finding one that I can switch to, that I'm happy
Oh, okay. I gotcha. Okay.
Because I have to be happy with the service in order for me to be able to do my phone readings. But
So
I do long distance shamanic healing work that I do through Skype. You know, my clients pay via PayPal,
okay.
and then we have Skype calls to
Gotcha.
to make sure that we communicate, because it takes a lot of talking, because we get to have in Mexico we call them pláticas, which is a soul-to-soul talk. It is having a really deep personal talk about what is going on in the life of my clients. Because when shamanic illness takes heart, and we had a show on shamanic illness actually, with Mr. Newton here, so they can look back at it. I think it was called Soul Level Illness. But when shamanic illness takes hold of somebody, it doesn't just mess with their health, it messes with every area of their lives. Everything begins to fall apart one thing at a time until everything is just in a big heaping pile of dysfunction.
Indeed.
Yeah, that's part of the process, is having a talk. Then I do shamanic divination to talk to the spirits that do the work that I do the work with. And they let me know, let's say that I'm working with Wendy. I ask them, what does Wendy have going on spiritually that I can help her with? And they tell me, well, let's say that she lost her power animal. She says she lost her power animal, she needs it back. Well, can I today retrieve it? And she says, yes, and you need to do these series of shamanic healings for today's session. And then I come back, we do another Skype call and tell her, this is what the spirit said. Do you want to go along with it? Then I do the work, then I call them again with aftercare.
Nice. Very,
so it's very detailed. Yeah. It's very detailed work.
And how would they get if they want a consultation from you? We have somebody in the room in the chat room that would actually like to know how to contact you.
My
for
website.
Consultation. On your website?
For long distance work is through my website. My website has a message ask form, and I get that is connected to the email on my phone. So wherever I go, I can get a hold of my clients. So my website, I will send it to Wendy after the show, like that she can post it.
Oh, I posted a link to your website in the chat. So
okie dokie.
If you hear a high pitched squealing, that's my dog Jasmine. She's in her stroller right now, but she getting a little antsy. She wanted to be a part of the conversation, apparently.
Don't tell Augie.
Okay.
he would want to be on my lap too, and that's just not happening.
Yeah, isn't he like a 150-pound dog?
120-pound German Shepherd, yes.
Oh, okay.
You never met a nicer dog, but he's just too big.
Yeah.
All righty. Okay, so now you said that I potentially lost my power animal, and now I'm curious, did that come to you out of the blue? Was that just an example? Or
no, it was just a random example that I made up.
Okay, okay, good. I thought, I don't think I lost him.
No.
Okay, good.
It was a hypothetical thing.
Good,
so
good.
Don't worry about it.
Thank you. All righty. Well, so how do the ancestors help you heal people?
Well, the ancestors help us heal, number one, by guiding us.
Okay.
The ancestors are those who lived well and died well. Those who lived a good life are at peace and moved on into the afterlife. Okay, let's make that distinction. There are dead people floating around that are not ancestors because they're still stuck in the middle world, in the spirit world, and not crossed over into the afterlife, and they have not yet acquired the wisdom of having looked over their entire life and learning the life lessons that their life needed to teach them. The ancestors are not necessarily spirit guides. Spirit guides go to a school in the spirit world to teach them to be spirit guides. The ancestors are ancestral guides. They're people too. They have not been elevated to a higher spiritual state. The ancestors are just who they used to be when they were alive. It's just that they learned a thing or two more since they left. So the ancestors can guide us in the many things that they were good at when they were alive. And they give us the perspective of someone who's not in the middle of the mess that we're in. They look at the world that we live in from an outsider's viewpoint. And because of that, they can give us a far more clear perspective on whatever illness or dysfunction is going on in our lives.
Very good. Very cool. And Seth, help me out with a question.
Okay. My mind's not working the best tonight. So sorry about that. Kind of energy level. I'm trying to work on my energy level. Do you communicate with the ancestors, your guides and such, in using your abilities? Like
I do it in many different ways. The landmark of a shaman and a shamanic practitioner, because there is a difference that I can go into here in a little bit, is the ability to do shamanic journey. Is to either through the beat of a drum, the sound of a rattle of other musical instruments, or dance, or even in the case of the few traditions around the world that use ethnogens, like ayahuasca is a good example, the most famous one, leaving their bodies and going into non-ordinary reality, into the world with the ancestors dwell, whether it be at the upper world or the lower world or the middle world. More than likely the upper world or the lower world. I can explain what those are here in a second. In those aspects, go speaking to the ancestors themselves and looking at them face to face through your spiritual abilities and having that communication on not only what is going on with your clients, but it could also be used for personal growth and healing.
Very cool. Because I always ask this, you do work a lot with Santa Muerte, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I also do bone casting. I read cards.
Mhm.
I do many forms of traditional shamanic divination along with tarot. Bone throwing is the one that most people go for because it's not seen very much anymore outside of the southern parts of the United States.
Right.
Because it's very prominent among practitioners of Southern Conjure. But beyond that community, it's not really seen all that much. So where I am, people see it as a bit of a novelty. But once they get a taste of how it can shed light upon their life patterns, past, present, and future, and what they need to pay attention to get their life to kind of click into place, they kind of latch onto it very well. Or as I like to joke around with my clients, how the hell did you get yourself in this mess?
Oh, too fun. Do you do a lot of could you explain a little bit about the throwing of the bones more, a little more in depth? That would be lovely.
The way I do my bone castings is that I have a little basket that is flat at the bottom, and it's round, and it has edges.
Oh, I've seen that in pictures.
Yeah, like that. The bones don't fly out of it. I say a prayer to my ancestors and to Santa Muerte for protection and guidance. Then I say a prayer for protection and guidance to the ancestors of my client. Then I pray for Santa Muerte to guide my client. Then I said another prayer to the Holy Trinity, and I cast the bones out of my hands into the basket. Each particular bone or curio has a specific meaning, more than one in most cases, several different meanings. And the random relationship to how the bones fell in relationship to each other and in relationship to where my client is sitting in the room reveals a little bit more details about the specific meaning of each bone. And together they begin to paint a picture of what's going on in my client's life.
Very nice. Okay. Sorry, the dogs had come in to say hi and they've left the door open and we're thumping back up the stairs.
How do you know when a client comes in? Do they ask you for what kind of service they want? Like, hey, I want a bone throw or a healing session, or do you
have a menu, believe it or not?
Oh, okay.
I I went on Vistaprint, actually. Shameless plug-in for that company that I don't even work for. But they have so many wonderful products to help your business along, that I made a menu.
Yeah, they do.
It was basically a threefold menu that you normally see at restaurants, little folds out.
Yeah,
It
those are
has
cool.
little blurbs on each of the different services that I have.
Oh, very cool. Is there ever a time a client requests a service, but then you say, well, actually, I'm kind of feeling we need this, like a different one? No, you
No,
always go with what they...
yes, for me, the client needs to be empowered to step on into their healing path
That makes
the
sense.
best way that they're comfortable doing. Because a
Okay.
lot of the times people are intimidated with the bones because they have such a connection to death and to the ancestors. And they feel more comfortable reading tarot cards because they've seen that on TV or a friend of them read them for them a long time ago.
I see.
And when I have a client that is sitting in front of me who's coming because they are considering shamanic healing, I need them to be as comfortable as possible. Otherwise, the energy of the reading itself is going to be really difficult to read because of their own personal discomfort. That energy permeates the room. And with my own psychic abilities, that kind of doesn't feel very nice to me. So it's hard to deal with both the reading and the stress that they're under. So for me, I need to make them as comfortable as possible, and that includes they picking the reading that they're comfortable with.
That makes sense. Okay. Makes a lot. So do you feel their energy? Is that one of your abilities?
I am an intuitive empath. My empathy is a little bit not very impressive when it comes to the world of the living. It's something that is very rare among empaths, but my empath works better with the dead. When I am connecting with the ancestors, because some of them do come to me to talk to the ancestors straight out for healing and closure, when you're so done grieving that you need the last goodbye or the last tears you never shed or the last things you never got to say to each other. That is more along the realms of mediumship and necromancy. But they do come to me for that. And when the dead connect to me and they start talking to me through my psychic senses, I get to sense how they are feeling. And sometimes they even make me feel where in their bodies the illness that took their life was, for example. It is not rare, for example, that I feel a pain in my chest, like I'm about, like a heart attack, and I feel my lungs not being able to breathe, and I go, did somebody have congestive heart failure? Because my heart just hurt really bad, and I started feeling like I couldn't breathe. And a lot of times, yeah, it turns out that it was. But that's just an example. My abilities as an empath are more naturally geared towards the dead, and that has always been the case for me.
Interesting. That is just interesting. I like that. I'm not saying like it, but that's just,
it's different.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's different. Most empaths are connected to the world of the living more.
Right.
But
that's what comes to your mind first off with empath.
But ever since I was a small child, I've always been connected more to the world of the spirits and the world of the living.
Okay.
Not only connecting to the dead, but connecting to the spirits of nature, for example. I have a story where me and my friends were playing at a local park, and there was the remainings of a fire when somebody had a bonfire the night before, and there were beer cans everywhere. And this woman came in looking for her husband, and he goes, do you know where he is? It's like, well, he was here last night doing this, and this with a young woman that I don't know who it is because it's not you. And she's like, what? Who the hell told you that? And I'm like, the tree over there.
Busted.
That tree over there told me. My mother and my grandmother had to educate me quite quickly how that was inappropriate.
Whoopsie. Cindy, she's been on with us before. She's asking in chat, do you use new bones every time in casting the bones?
No. The bones themselves build up a spiritual charge of energy.
Okay.
Each time that they're used, they become more and more connected with the world of the ancestors. So the more a bone set is used, the more powerful it becomes in a tool for
that makes sense.
Healing.
Just like the cards, probably, right?
Well, cards, actually, it pays off to cleanse them often.
Okay.
Because cards pick up the energy of your clients as well.
Okay.
And sometimes you end up reading the energy of clients that have not read for in months. And their energy is still in the cards if you haven't properly cleansed them.
Okay.
And you end up having a reading that was meant for a completely different person because you didn't properly cleanse your cards like you're supposed to. A lot of tarot readers like to, for example, put their cards in order, you know, like if they're brand new out of the pack from 0 all the way to the last card, you know, all in perfect order, all of them facing up facing upwards and everything. And that's part of how they reset their cards. For me, I treat them with Reiki. There's a couple of Reiki techniques that I use to kind of disconnect them from the energy of my clients and cleanse them of the charge that they have, like that they're neutral again. Like that when I'm reading for my clients, I'm reading my client's energy, not the energy from the cards that is past.
Okay. Let me see. Excuse me. Cindy's also asking, can someone bring bones to you, or do you choose which bones to use?
I have my own bone set. I have a bone set that is a Sangoma style bone set. The Sangoma style of bone throwing is from Africa. Sangoma shamans normally cast their bones into a goat pelt at the feet of their clients to diagnose what shamanic illness is ailing them. I also have a more traditional Southern Conjure style bones, which are chicken bones. And Southern Conjure chicken bones are very popular to do bone throwing with. Also, possum bones are very popular. So,
what was that last one? I'm sorry.
Oh, possum.
Possum. Okay.
Either possum bones or chicken bones are both very popular. But I have my own bones that I use.
Okay.
Because they have such a high charge because I've been using them for so long. And I also need to have a personal connection to the bones.
Right. You're tuning right into who you need to be tuning into.
Precisely.
Okay. Nadine's saying that she was told she was a shaman in a past life. I'm curious how to figure out which life and when.
Well, that's when you need to go to someone like a hypnotist or a priest or priestess of a magical type religion, you know, that believes in magical energies, to do a past life regression.
Okay.
She needs past life regression to figure that one out.
I know a good one, if you want me to say later.
Oh, please do. Oh, unless Roman is one.
Huh?
Roman, are you a past life?
I have training in past life regression. I am a student at Wolstenstein Theological Seminary, the Tabernacle Church of Wicca. And part of the curriculum is touched on past life regression. So I do have some training. It's not as extensive as what you would get with someone who's a hypnotist, for example. So, but I can do some minor work with past life regression with my clients.
Very nice. Okay.
In the form of a guided meditation.
Oh, sure. That makes sense. Relax yourself and then travel.
Precisely.
Okay, Cindy is asking, how often do people usually want to reconnect with a loved one that's passed? Is it unhealthy to regularly want to stay in touch with a dear one who's passed, or?
Well, that is when we have to go across with the energy of, are you really coming for closure, or are you trying to avoid grieving?
Okay.
Grief is one of the most important things that we need to do actively. And when we're trying to keep the memory alive and avoid grief by connecting with the dead magically, it can create more problems than it can heal.
Sure.
So I always tell my clients, make sure that if you come to see me, you feel that you're done heavily grieving, because that will get in the way of the reading. And after a while, the dead move on. They do. They have other things to do in the spirit world that are no longer available for us.
Okay.
That is why what I do talking to the dead is more along the line of closure, like that they can both move on to where they need to be, both the living and the dead. Otherwise, it's going to keep the dead anchored to the world of the living. And that creates dysfunction, which later ends up showing as ancestral healing that is needed. And it also keeps the living in a perpetual cycle of grief.
Right.
So in reality, when it comes to using necromancy to contact the dead, you better have a damn good reason for it, beyond just wanting to talk to them, because it is bringing the energy of someone who doesn't belong in your world anymore, and forcing them to acclimate back to a world that no longer wants them.
I can see that making the entity rather cranky.
Well, when they are worried about you because you're still heavily grieving, sometimes they try to come through, but the grief does get in the way of the reading incredibly badly. In many occasions, the dead feel like they don't even want to talk to their living person because they're afraid of wounding them further, of ripping off the Band-Aid too soon.
That makes sense. In a grieving type of way. I think I've read it before, where the grief that was holding someone on this side of where they shouldn't be, basically, caused the entity to kind of go dark, to become resentful and just, I'm not saying evil, but it could probably be more like almost like a poltergeist situation. Is that correct?
That's when we get to the meat and potatoes of my work as a shamanic healer, which is ancestral healing.
Okay.
I first got into ancestral healing when I was putting together a psychic fair with a friend of mine. It was called the Metaphysical Market here in Seattle. We're no longer doing it. She moved away. We both moved away.
Oh.
But that one of those fairs, somebody came to me for a bone throw, who was a very regular person who I read for quite often, or life situations, basically, you know, help with perspective. But this time what came up is that for the last 12 generations in her family, every single male in her family had died of the exact same illness at the exact same age.
Oh my gosh.
And she asked for help shamanically, and I had to openly state the truth is that I had never been trained on how to help someone like that, and I had no way of helping. Okay. And I gave her some information where she could find other shamanic healers, hopefully that someone will be able to help her. And I went to one of my teachers in Non-Ordinary Reality, one of the spirits that teach me how to do this work. And I go, did you just see that? How do I help someone like this? And they began piece by piece giving me the path, the formula that I follow to begin teaching not teaching, but performing ancestral healing. Because that's what happens when the dead get brought or stay in the world of the living. Is that whatever illness that they had in life on an emotional and spiritual level permeates the very essence of who they are. And they try to latch on to their living loved ones in order to find help. But instead, they infect that person with that illness. Okay. And it just keeps getting passed down the generations each time that they try to come close to the living. And that's how you end up with families who had alcoholics for like 15 generations who were all abusive. You know, it is not just the physical patterns that we emulate from our parents and their parents' parents, but is the energy of the dead that is primordially stuck in a place that no longer wants them. It is when they go into the afterlife that they begin to process their issues. And without that ability to process their pain and their joy both and learn from them, these illnesses that destroy their lives are going to continue to destroy the lives of the living.
And what's your process for going in and fixing that?
Well, the first thing I do is I do a bone throw to see what's going on and how the energy is flowing. And there are specific bones that I have. Well, a good example of that is a little bead that somebody gave me, and the bead is carved like a skull, and it's made out of bone, literally.
Okay.
And I forgot what animal bone it is, but that's my ancestor bead. So depending on how the ancestor bead falls in the basket in relationship to all the other ones, that lets me know the role that the ancestors are playing. So if the ancestor bead falls in a very specific configuration that is very close to the illness in the other configurations, that lets me know that the ancestors are part of this issue.
Okay.
And that's when I ask, you know, sometimes I have a little dice that I throw as part of it. And the dice comes up with a number. And I said, this has been happening, what, 6 generations in your family? Or whatever number that the dice.
Right, yeah.
And a lot of the times, yeah, that they agree with that. Then once we figure out the pattern, I beat my rattle for a while,
Mhm.
and I entered a shamanic trance. I go into a shamanic state of consciousness,
Okay.
and I exit my body, and I go into the spirit world, into non-ordinary reality, as it's properly called in my path. And I speak to this many spirits that help me do this work. And I go, the bones just said that this person has a generational curse, that their family has been passing on this illness for a very long time. What do I need to do to heal it? Sometimes they tell me to do the entire process that my spirits taught me. Sometimes they tell me to break it up into little chunks through over several sessions, because it can be that intense. And
Mhm.
that not only their illness is very enmeshed in their family, but because of that, breaking it all apart at once might be too much.
For you and the client, I would imagine.
Well, for me, no.
Oh, okay.
I will explain why.
Okay.
In a minute. Don't forget to ask me why, because that's important for people to
Okay.
understand. After that, I come back and I discuss with my clients, this is what the spirits asked me to do for you today. If they agree, we move on with the healing. If they disagree, I charge them only for the reading, and then they can go on their merry way.
Mhm.
One of the number one things that we do as part of my work is using energy work with my rattle. And we unweave the web of life itself,
Mhm.
the connections that they have to each other, both living and dead. All of
Okay.
those negative connections that are primarily not contributing nourishment in a good way to this person, but are embedded within the illness that the family pattern is based on. All of those get to be dismantled. And the family then has the opportunity to rebuild a new web of life for their family, together with their own ancestral spirits and the spirits that rule those type of work in non-ordinary reality. Traditionally, after that, I cross over any spirits of the dead that are stuck in this world, and that they are contributing to the illness. And final, after that, there's just something very interesting that I haven't encountered that many shamanic healers who speak about this part of the work, so I don't know how well known it is. It's just that when you have an ancestral healing that is needed, that has gone to the point of becoming a generational curse, the curse itself is an entity that lives within the family. It is almost like a golem, or a thought form, or even a daemon that needs
Okay.
to be properly transmuted and released. Because even if the dead are crossed over properly, that entity can continue to perpetuate the spiritual illness in the family. And finally, because most forms of curses are a form of soul theft, and I can explain that if you wish,
Please.
I return whatever power animal or pieces of the soul in a soul retrieval that the person needs in order to release and move on.
Okay.
That is the process that I go through. But as I said, when I speak to the spirits, they normally tell me how much of it I do, or any modifications that need to be made for my clients. I have clients that I have been doing pieces of this work, one piece at a time, over the last 2 years.
Wow.
They come to me on a regular basis, and it needs to be taken seriously, because when we unweave the families from their own illnesses from each other, and then on top of that, when we release this energy of the dead, all of the energy that the dead and the golem that was the illness is no longer playing a part in the in that illness. All that is left is our own patterns. And all of those patterns are going to come to surface for the individuals, for them to deal with them and release them and heal. And either they can heal them and let them go and become a better human being, or they can embrace them and self-destruct. And that is going to happen for the entire family and the entire community that was involved in this generational curse. So yeah, it needs to be taken a little bit more seriously because of that. I have clients that have come back to me for 2-3 generational curse unravelings for different areas of their families and communities' lives. And then they stopped because their family could not handle it. They realized that she could handle it, my client could, but the family, some members of her family were very happy with their illness, and it was making it worse for them. So out of
Lovely.
respect for them, she stopped the process.
And I'm guessing then that it cannot be, you can't like laser focus on her then to help her and not let it spread out to the family more. Like
That's
she couldn't.
impossible.
Yeah. Okay.
It's impossible with my process
Mhm.
because my process it's about the greater level of illness. Because generational curses are a lot like a cold in a family of 5 living in a single house. You know, one of them gets sick and then the other one gets better and then they get sick and they keep passing around and around and around and around until either everybody goes to the doctor or everybody just accepts that they have a cold.
Right. I would imagine it can morph and become stronger and stronger and stronger as it goes as well.
Well, that's the example that I gave at the beginning of the family with the 12 generations.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, that illness got passed down spiritually for 12 generations.
Wow. It's very, very special that you can help people with that. I have nothing but admiration for you.
It's you know, when I was training with the Foundation for Shamanic Studies, one of my teachers told me, Roman, when you're ready to do this work, you're going to get a type of shamanic healing that's what you are good at.
Mm-hmm.
That's your thing, that's what everybody's going to know you for, and that's what everybody's going to come to you for.
Mm-hmm.
Some people do soul retrievals, some do power animal retrievals, some do divination, many different types of shamanic healing. And I go, yep, not going to happen to me. Nope. Not going to be doing this.
Famous last words.
Yep, because I fought my path as a shamanic healer for years. I did not want to be doing this, you know.
Okay.
I wanted to be doing other things.
Okay.
And when I accepted this path, this came to me. And it came together, you know. Me stepping into the path of a shamanic healer came together with me learning the generational unraveling generation curses.
Mm-hmm.
And ever since, I have literally met people from all over the world.
Neat.
Who travel the world, and one of them told me, you know, we were thinking about where we were going to vacation, but if we decided that if we came to Seattle, we could do the short trip to come see you for this kind of healing. And I'm like, where are you coming from? New Zealand. And I'm like, what?
Oh, well, they could have flown you over, right? To see them.
I had people offer me that.
Mm-hmm.
A few years ago, I had one of my clients, because I do group readings with my mediumship work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where they put me in a room, and whoever's dead relatives are the loudest. Whoever won't leave me alone, those are the messages I pass on to the entire audience.
Mm-hmm.
And this person was a very wealthy businessman. You know, one of those Fortune 500 types that,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that ran their company.
Mm-hmm.
And he offered me to fly me to Hong Kong to do a group reading and do individual readings for an event for investors that he was putting up.
Wow.
And I was going to be there working for 2 days, and I was going to stay there for a week, and he was going to pay for all my expenses, including extra money for fun. Unfortunately, he wanted me to fly out the next day, and I did not have my paperwork together.
Oh, that can be a problem. Yes.
So yeah.
Darn it anyway.
I've had those offers made to me. So,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah. But that lady who came to see me with her family had a really good time in Seattle. So I feel good.
Oh, good. Absolutely. Still, New Zealand is one I would not mind going to visit.
I have clients from all over the world, both distance and in person.
Mm-hmm. I glanced over and saw that we have a friend from a long time, Josie, is in the chat room, and she's from England, so she is listening. Good morning, Josie. I hope we didn't wake you up too early. But Seth, is there another question in the chat there? Looks like Cindy might have one.
Yes, actually, I had one too.
Okay.
About what is your process of crossing?
Oh, in shamanism, we call that psychopomp work, mostly among scholars.
Okay.
Sakapum work, it's literally taking the spirit by the hand and going into the afterlife and leaving them where they need to be. I get out of my body through rattle or drum work. I find the spirit that needs to be crossed over. I have the help of my power animal and my helper spirits, and together we take them to where they need to be. And it is my power animals and my helper spirits who dictate where they need to be, because I don't know, they do. So together we either go to the upper world or to the lower world, and we find a place where they can process their life and be in a better place.
Nice.
Could you talk a little bit about what the worlds are
Oh,
and
definitely.
what you do in each world?
In shamanic cosmology, particularly core shamanism, there are 3 parts of the world that they are all subdivided into their own little levels. And this is something that has been found cross-culturally among many indigenous people who practice shamanism. There is the middle world, which is literally the world that we live in, but it's its spiritual components, where time and space run differently. This is the place where we find the spirits of the dearly departed who need to be crossed over mostly because they're stuck here. This is the place where we sometimes found pieces of our soul that have fragmented and are beginning to cause us illness because we have soul loss and they need to be retrieved. Some shamanic traditions divide them into the 4 directions, north, south, east, and west. And because of that, into the 4 elements, earth, air, fire, and water. Particularly European traditions do that. Then there is the lower world, which is beneath us. A lot of traditions around the world exemplify this 3-world system by a tree. The trunk of the tree is the middle world. The roots of the tree are into the earth and down into the lower levels, which are the lower world. This is where you find most power animals and earth-based spirits. Then there is above, which is the upper world, when you find most celestial type beings and more of all beings of light and more teachers and angels and gods and goddesses and all of this more evolved spiritual beings that more spiritual traditions have. Each particular world, either the upper world, the lower world, or the middle world, have their own levels, particularly the upper world and the lower world. It is like a skyscraper that has the floor level, and then it has several basement levels and several levels above. And all you have to do is go up and down in the elevator.
Oh, nice. It sounds like the Norse. They have their tree like that, right? And
Yes, that is a perfect example of an indigenous
what are there,
people.
7 levels, or am I thinking wrong?
I'm not particularly well versed in Norse shamanic practices,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm not going to speak about that.
Oh, okay, alrighty.
I don't want to talk out of my butt.
Well, I can't remember the names of them anyway, and even if I could remember, I probably couldn't pronounce them correctly.
That's
So,
also part of the problem.
yes, yep. I know there's the little squirrel guy but he goes up and down all the time through the different worlds as a messenger, if I remember correctly.
But that energy of the world tree or the world pillar, the axis mundi, the central part of the world, it is a cross-cultural aspect of shamanism that most shamanic cultures share. And it doesn't always take the form of a tree. In some traditions, it is a mountain. The perfect example would be Mount Olympus in Greek mythology.
Sure.
You can ascend up to the heavens, to the world of the gods, and climb Mount Olympus. You can find the entrance like a cave and go down into Tartarus and the Elysian fields, which is the world of the dead below. Or you can stay in the middle world and look up or look down,
Right.
There are some traditions in which it takes the form of a literal pillar. A lot of cultures that have tents that they pitch up, or even teepees with the Native Americans, the pillars are part of what they climb. I have read accounts of native indigenous shamans here in the United States who, when they went into a spiritual ecstasy, they lifted out of the hole at the top of their teepee and into the heavens to talk to the ancestors. So yeah, it takes many forms. And the basic
Sure.
idea is being that central pillar that the universe pivots around, and how you can go up or down. And it is in those journeys that the shaman finds their power.
Very nice. I'm sorry, I was just looking. It's not
It's
letting
not letting
Seth
me
scroll.
scroll up. Yeah, so I have to get the question again. But we have
Okay.
another question in the interim.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any book recommendations to understand shamanic practices from Sasha, June, and Ian from Tacoma, Washington?
So to help understand shamanic practices, my favorite book on the subject that got me started, there's two of them. Number one would be The Way of the Shaman by Michael Harner. That book is what started the revival of interest in shamanic healing in the Western world. It began in that, as soon as it got published in the 50s, around the 60s or 70s, I forgot when it was published, everybody wanted to become a shaman. And what Michael Harner then did is that he got a group of his anthropologist people that he knew, and he sent them all over the world to study with the local indigenous shamans of their areas. And then they all came back together and they talk about what they learned, and they all figure out what they all had in common. And that's what they began to teach to the people who came to them. And that's why they call it core shamanism, because it's the core practices that you build upon later. There's another very famous book that goes over the ecstatic experiences of shamans, and it's called Shamanism, Ecstatic Techniques of Ecstasy by Mercia, Eliade. And that book was something that started in, I think, 1920s or something like that. And it was literally one of the very first books published from a scholarly perspective that treated with a little bit more respect the indigenous practices of shamans. And it goes primarily, its focus is not the shamanic journey like Michael Harner's book is, which is literally a how-to book, but this is an account of the initiatory practices of shamans.
Very interesting. Ah, Junius says thank you.
We have Cindy's question now too.
Mm-hmm.
Does it hold back a soul when the living they were connected? Wait, I might be saying it wrong. Does it hold back a soul when the living they were connected to can't live life? That makes sense.
Okay, it can hold them back because they're worried about them.
In other words, if a living person can't move on after a loved one has passed, does that hold back the soul of the loved ones that's deceased if the living can't let go of their death?
Truthfully, yes.
Sure.
Because that level of pain and grief becomes a spiritual connection that anchors them here. But beyond grief, grief can be healed easily. You know, it can be as easily as making a personal connection with your loved one and saying the words that you never got to say when they were alive. What holds back into the world of the living the dead more is anger. When somebody has done you wrong, and even after they are dead, you are pissed off at them 10 wells till Sunday because they did you wrong. Not only did they get to live rent-free inside your head after they're dead, but they get to live in your energy, and you are permanently connected to them like a ball and chain, and they will weigh you down. And that's a big part of how generational curses get started. It's because people do not forgive their toxic parents or grandparents or ancestors because they are angry at the illness that they began in the family. And until somebody who's a personal genetic barrier of their lineage, somebody who's a part of the people they harmed, gives them the forgiveness that they had been denied, they will not move on.
Quite often, forgiveness isn't the problem, it's forgetting.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it begins with forgiveness.
Sure. Okay.
Well, that happened to me because my dad, when he passed over, I'm a medium too, and I was doing a reading for my sister and my dad was coming through, and I told him on his deathbed that I will forgive him, but I can't forget things that he's done. And I think part of me still didn't forgive him. Anyway, through this reading, he was coming through, he was trying to give me messages and talk to me and process and try to make amends. And I'm like, I'm not into this right now. I'm not ready. It took me a while to get ready to actually really, at a soul level, forgive him.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I did, then we were able to move past that, and I could feel his spirit shifted. So that does make sense. And then Cindy had another question
Mm-hmm.
about how can a person get their soul back if part or all of it died?
That is when we get to soul retrieval, which is the final portion of my ancestral healing work, which can also be done independently. And we were supposed to talk about shamanic techniques as part of this show. Okay.
Yes.
The first part of knowing whether or not you need soul retrieval is going to a shaman or a shamanic practitioner, and they need to do a divination, a shamanic divination, to talk to whatever spirits help them do their work, to see if either you need it or if they are the right person to do it for you. Because each shaman or shamanic practitioner carries a different energy, a different way of doing things. And because of that, it's a completely different experience with completely different people. So once they know that you need it and they are the right person to do it, my first step for me personally is to do a shamanic extraction. A shamanic extraction is when, together with my helper spirits, I look at the spirit of that person and I look at the holes in their spirit where their soul should be, where pieces of their soul are missing. And I see any spirits of nature, any dead relatives, or any energies that don't belong there. And I clean them out and I release them to the proper place where they belong. Once that has been done, and normally that session can take up to an hour and a half, very rarely more than that. And it's very intense. I had shamanic extractions that about 45 minutes into it, my helper spirit that was helping me do the extraction says stop. And I'm like, okay, he can't take it anymore. Your client is about to be overloaded and overwhelmed. And then she told me to do a power animal retrieval, like that the power animal could guard the wound. It could be like a bandage that you put over a freshly clean wound.
Okay.
After the shamanic extraction, normally we pass on shamanic energy from our spirit, from our guides, from our helper spirits, to help fill the holes and soothe the wound, almost like a medicine, like an ointment that you put over an open wound. Then what the shaman or shamanic practitioner does is that we go into trance with a rattle or a drum, and we travel the non-ordinary reality. We go to the lower world or the upper world, and in some cases the middle world, and we find the pieces of your soul that are missing, and we bring them back, and we put them into the places in your aura or in your soul, basically, where the holes are. In my tradition, where I was taught to never retrieve more than 3 pieces for session, because the session itself is quite easy on the client. All they have to do is be willing to let go and be willing to receive. But the issue comes afterwards, because the soul pieces that stayed, the part of you that stayed and survived your trauma, they are the strongest pieces of you that you will ever have. You are a badass. You survived some very mean stuff. Those other pieces were not so lucky or not so strong. They had to run away in order to survive, and they still carry that wound. And because of that, I tell all my clients, if you're going to do soul retrieval work with me, you need to be having all of your family behind you and supporting you, your community, and access to mental health care in case it gets bad enough that you need it. Because those pieces are going to come back wounded and in pain and in a lot of need for love and care. And you're not only going to have to be mommy and daddy to your own self, but you're going to need a lot of support. Now, soul loss is something that has a lot of connections to other illnesses. A lot of the times when we have a hole in our aura or in our spirit, that is where illness can get in. And that illness can take the form of negative patterns in our life, or it can literally become a physical illness. The most common illness that results as a form of soul loss is post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD, as someone who's living with PTSD and has those extensive soul retrieval, has had extensive soul retrieval on myself by my teachers and members of my community. And as someone who performs on a regular basis, I have no problem stating that soul loss is post-traumatic stress disorder. Because people who have PTSD, their soul is stuck in the middle world, in that exact moment when their soul fragmented, reliving their fragmentation over and over and over again, to the point in which in many situations, people with PTSD have flashbacks where they reconnect with that soul piece and they relive that experience fully in a flashback. They literally can't differentiate between the mental picture and the real world. So yes, PTSD is something that you would definitely want to see a shaman or a shamanic practitioner to do soul retrieval for, but you are going to need your mental health care professional to be right there with you. Not literally, mind you, but to be on your side and to support you. Because there is no cure for PTSD currently in the medical field. All that the mental health care professionals can do is give you anxiety medication, because they don't understand anything about how we fragment or what happens. It is in the same spectrum as dissociative disorders and anxiety disorders in the DSM, but beyond categorizing it, they don't know what to do about it.
I've run across that a little bit myself, but I worked through it. I could go on. So, were there any more questions, Seth? Or
There is one about how to know. Oh yeah, Mandy, how do you know if your purpose in life is to be a shaman?
My grandmother used to tell me, nobody in their right mind wants to be a shaman, or a curandero, or a brujo, or a sorcerer. Those are words and roles that your community bestows upon you because of the services that you provide, of the good that you do for the community. Most people have some type of a calling, an illness that they cannot release unless they are initiated, or soul loss, for example, shamanic illness like PTSD, or multiple personality disorder, or any of this type of illnesses that are connected to a soul level illness can be a calling to do shamanism. There are some people who just feel the draw to work with the spirits. There are people who are chosen by the spirits, that all of a sudden a spirit showed up and go, hey, you want to work with me?
tag, you're it. Yeah.
Or there are people who just simply feel the draw to study shamanism because that's something that calls to them at a soul level. They feel it's beautiful. There is no wrong or right way to be called to shamanism, but this is where we differentiate traditional indigenous shamans from shamanic practitioners and shamanic healers. Traditional indigenous shamans have had shamanic illness, have been initiated by the spirits of their ancestors in a traditional vision, and they have been trained by other shamans from their tribe in their traditional ways. Shamanic practitioners normally learn from Westerners who have either studied with the shamans, or they have learned something like Core Shamanism, which is a Western version of shamanism. It is why I call myself a shamanic practitioner, not a shamanic healer, because even though I do have had the traditional calling with a shamanic illness, and I have had initiatory experiences with the spirits of my ancestors, I did not get to have the full training and initiatory experience with my cultural elders. So I do not have a full-blown traditional shamanic initiation. It was not finished. And out of respect for the indigenous people who have had all three of those components fulfilled, I call myself a shamanic practitioner and a shamanic healer.
Okay. Right. I've talked to several different shamanic practitioners who say they studied the core shamanism, and that's kind of where they stay, so that they are not doing the cultural misappropriation and that type of thing. But they're actually really, really good. But,
You know, core shamanism, to be blunt, is very, very controversial among indigenous peoples.
oh, okay.
I've had people who wanted to work with me when they found out that I work core shamanism and I don't do traditional indigenous shamanism from a Mexican standpoint, that I'm not a traditional curandero or shaman from an indigenous tribe in Mexico, accuse me of cultural appropriation and whitewashing, because the practices that I was doing were not part of their indigenous tradition. And they basically accused me of not only culturally appropriating and whitewashing, but of betraying my own ancestors by practicing these practices. And I've seen people in the indigenous community call the students of Michael Harner and the Foundation for Shamanic Studies paper shamans, because they did not have that full-blown indigenous experience of being traditionally called with an illness and have the initial experience with the spirits, and even are trained by their tribal people. And they see that as an insult to those who had to practice any form of shamanism. So there are those who feel that the only real valid form to be a shaman is the indigenous one.
That it's interesting. Like shaman have been around since the dawn of time, right? I mean, or the waking of man.
It's a prototype to all religions. Every people in the world who has any religious or spiritual practice, you can trace it back to shamanism. And every indigenous people everywhere in the world, not only in the Americas, but in Europe, had some type of a shamanic practice at one point.
But the am I looking at verbal tradition? You know how all of the knowledge is right. I mean, it's kind of dying out a little bit, isn't it?
Yes, there is a lot of people in indigenous traditions who really want to be westernized, who look up to Western standards of beauty and culture and all of these things. They are enamored with Western culture. And because of that, they shun the traditional ways. There is actually a very big movement in the Mexican community with people who are either indigenous or who are mixed, who have both European and indigenous heritage, and to focus only in their indigenous heritage and decolonize themselves, as they call it.
Okay.
They normally run around with banners that says 500 years of oppression.
Well, you know, they're not wrong.
They're not wrong, but people like me who are mixed, I am half Native and I have half European ancestry. We are looked on very badly by the Native people, because people like me have had a really big role in what is the word, in gentrifying them and destroying their native cultures to bring them into the modern era. And there are several tribes running around in Mexico who refuse to have anything to do with the modern world. They live in the mountains of the middle of nowhere, still living in the old ways.
I wonder if they're happier. That's just my own curiosity.
You know, for me, when I met them, it was talking to the Huichol people of the area of Mexico that I'm from, and they were quite happy with their practices, and they were quite happy with where they lived, and they came down very rarely to the city to take care of business, but they lived most of their life living off the earth and dealing with the spirits and having their traditional religious practices intact. And for them, it was meaningful. And it is also because of them that I call myself a shamanic practitioner and shamanic healer, because I don't want to culturally appropriate something that is not mine in a culture when that is not welcome.
That's very astute of you. Bravo.
I've had those experiences in which I tried to connect with them because I wanted to learn more about my indigenous heritage, and I was shunned. And I says, well, you're not indigenous, you are one of them. Otherwise, you would be.
But that's not your fault. Yeah, I mean,
otherwise you will be living with us in the middle of the mountains. You know?
That's almost like a continuation of the generational curses.
It can be. It's a very deep wound amongst the indigenous people, and it's a wound that needs to be respected.
Sure, sure.
because nobody in this world is going to understand it better than they are.
Right. Right. All of the history, you can read all the history books you want, but you're not there living it.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm. Cindy asks, Roman, how do you rejuvenate from the intense work you do?
Ooh, okay.
Good question.
When I do my work, two things are happening. Number one, I am in a trance. I am in what we call in Core Shamanism a shamanic state of consciousness. So I'm not completely in my mind at all. I'm either traveling to another world or I am in a different state of consciousness, which it cannot be described unless you experience it. The closest people that people can experience who do not practice shamanism is in those moments right before you fully wake up, where you're neither awake nor asleep, you're in between.
Mm-hmm.
It feels somewhat like that. But number two, I never do my work alone. I am a vehicle for my helper spirits to do the work through me. They do the work, I help. If I take on any of that energy or any of that healing on my own, I could get severely hurt. It is why I have altars to all of my helper spirits all over my home. My home is one giant temple to them and to the ancestors as well, because they are the ones who do the work, not me. I just help. And once they go back to the spirit world and they leave me back, I return to normal. And normally I feel quite good, actually. Shamanism is known as a technique of ecstasy because it is necessary to have that ecstatic experience for the shaman to be healthy. When a shaman resists the energy of their work, when they are not embracing their path, the ecstasy is denied. And normally that is when the ecstasy is not present, when harm comes. I spent many years out of my life denying the fact that I needed to be in a shamanic path. And when I tried to do other forms of healing, it did drain me. And it is not until I fully embraced the type of work that I needed to be doing with ancestral healing and that I found shamanic ecstasy. And that ecstatic experience of being at one with a divinity or with a spirit that is there to help you is what nourishes the shaman the most. That moment of unity with the divine and being a vehicle for divine healing into the life of your client. That is how we stay healthy.
Embrace embrace it, or you start degrading, basically. I understand.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
It has been my experience in the past that the more I denied my shamanic calling, the more my life fell apart.
Sure.
Began with my health. My health began to deteriorate, which is a continuation of that shamanic illness I suffered as a child.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then my relationships fell apart, then my finances fell apart, and everything began falling apart. And the closer I got to re-embracing my shamanic path, the more my life improved. And that is just simply another aspect of telling on how, for me, it was that moment of saying, yes, I'll work for you, that took away the illness. And if I refused to work for those spirits,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm taking back my oath, so they are going back on theirs and they return what was taken away.
You're on your own at that point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that is how sorcerers are born. In many tribal cultures, a lot of sorcerers are born as shamans and they practice the shamanic path until they do something that make their helper spirits that help them heal abandon them. They either do something negative, like harm someone for no good reason, or simply deny the path. And because of that, they are left powerless and they seek out dark spirits or immoral spirits or other types of spirits that would do harm, and they begin doing work as people who do harm for money.
I would imagine the darker spirits feed on that.
Well, you know, every diablero, as we call them in Mexico, knows very well that at the end of their life, those spirits will either devour them or take them somewhere very unpleasant. So they just enjoy the ride for as long as they can.
That's good incentive then to do right.
Cindy asks, can a soul be stolen?
Oh, goodness, yes. Soul theft. In a lot of instances, in my work, particularly with healing generational curses. I have encountered people who come to me for illnesses that have lived for several generations, like the example of the 12th generation lady. I've had encounters with clients who had abusive relationships for 12, 14, 15 generations in her mother's family. And when I went into non-ordinary reality to cross over the spirits who began the issue, I found all those 15 generations of women being kept as slaves by that original soul who began the illness, to be more powerful and to be able to inflict more of that illness on their future generations. That is how the dead use it. People who are very clingy. Let's say that that you had a lover or a loved one who you had a powerful love affair with, and they passed away and they did not want to let you go. They can take a piece of you with them into the afterlife. I have encountered mothers that when they divorced, they did not want their father, the father of their children, to be connected to their children. So they literally stole the souls of their babies to be in control. I have encountered situations in which people who are very apt sorcerers stole the souls or the soul pieces of people who had attributes to their spirituality or their everyday life that they coveted. Let's say that you're a really good person with finances and that sorcerer stinks at managing their finances. They can steal the part of you that is good with money. They can even steal your power animal to leave you powerless to their attacks. Soul theft is a huge thing, in particular when it comes to dealing with generational curses, because that is how they stay in control. The spirits who need to be crossed over, they take pieces of your soul, or in the case of the dead, entire souls. It is definitely a thing.
I don't have any other questions here.
Mute. Sorry, I was still muted. Is there a way that you can spiritually block someone stealing your soul?
Yes, yes, but it takes a great deal of spiritual mastery.
Okay.
It begins with having healthy boundaries, not just boundaries in a verbal way or in an acting way, but having healthy energy boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
One of the worst things that people do that ends in soul theft, that is some voluntary soul theft, comes in relationships. You cannot believe the amount of people who come to me as a shamanic healer because they cannot have good relationships. And it comes in my bone thrower and my card reading that the last good relationship they had, they gave that man or woman their heart and soul. And I asked them, did you ever get it back? And it never occurred to them that when they gave them all that love, that they quite literally gave them a part of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that boundary that was never said of, this is my life, that's your life. You need to be healthy in your life, I need to be healthy in my life, and we share that happiness and health with each other.
Mm-hmm.
That is a healthy relationship. When you put all of that weight on making each other happy on each other instead of yourselves, you open yourself up for you taking pieces of one another just to stay connected. And that is a form of soul theft. Boundaries, like that example that I just given of having a healthy relationship instead of demanding happiness from each other, are the first step. Having a healthy energetic boundary where your energy is your sacred energy. It's not shared with people who are going to take, and you give, and never be reciprocated, is part of that energy. Having a healthy management of your own spiritual energy. There is people, anytime that they get upset or angry or even a little bit stressed, they spew their stress or their anger or their hate all over the place. And sometimes when you do that, people who are spiritually apt can use that string of energy that you have to spew out to pull out pieces of your soul. So it is the energy of being responsible with the energy that you have and how you use it and how you release it and how you allow others to have it. It is being good at managing your own energy that is the first step to avoiding soul theft. Because if you had a bad relationship, let's say with your mother, and you never stop yourself from being angry or wounded about that. That can be a perfect opening for soul theft, because you are giving out all this anger and hate and pain and sorrow. Now, if you heal yourself and you deal with your anger and your hate and your sorrow in a healthy way, that is going to block that pathway for mom to come back and keep grabbing pieces of you to feel strong.
Give her a little psychic smack and walk away. Sorry.
That smile's for Josie, by the way. She said I wasn't smiling. So there she goes. That's for her. We have Cindy again. Brought up another really good thing. Roman, can you talk to us about soul transfer? A person who had a soul, but then let it move out so another soul can reside in them. Like a walk-in?
Walk-ins.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Walk-in, yeah.
A walk-in. You know, I have very little experience with that. And the experiences that I have are incredibly personal, so I don't feel comfortable sharing them with the whole world.
Okay.
But somebody who knows a lot about that type of stuff that could shed more light in a future show is Micah Rand. That is right up her alley.
Okay.
Not only soul, like walk-ins, but star seeds, people whose energy comes from another place in the universe and things like that. That is really up her alley. So
we were going to cover that
with her, because that is one of her specialties, dealing with people who feel that they don't belong either in their bodies or in this planet.
She's a lot of fun to talk to. I think we'll have a good show. And, you know, Roman, if you want to come along and you know, cheer us on, that's cool too.
Okay.
Okay. Back to, you know, setting up good boundaries and that type of thing. Would you suggest perhaps wearing certain crystals or something to help you feel more empowered about what you're doing?
Well, you know, this is something that is an epidemic in Western culture, because particularly in the United States, we're not supposed to have emotions.
Oh, right. Yeah.
We're not supposed to have emotions, and we're never taught how to deal with emotions. And energy follows emotion. Energy follows emotion. So if you do not know how to properly deal with your emotions, both the happy and the unhappy ones, and in doing so, know how to properly direct your energy into somewhere positive where it's not going to do you harm, all the freaking crystals in the world, it's not going to do you any good.
True.
You need to be a grown-ass man and a grown-ass woman, if you can, if you are grown, and deal with your shit like a grown person. Not necessarily pushing it down to the bottom of your belly where it's just going to stew there like a miasma because you're
fester.
But learning how to express, how to vocalize, how to let go without doing more harm to yourself or doing more harm to other people. A lot of these generational curses that I deal with begin with a human being that was deeply, deeply wounded and angry about it. And they did not know how to properly deal with that anger. So they took it out on their loved ones or even on themselves or both. And when they died, that did not stop. So in reality, the best thing you can do is find spiritual practices, meditation, energy healing. Crystal healing can help if you can connect to your crystals to help you deal with your stress and your emotions. Anything that helps you be in a better emotional and spiritual space is the beginning of those boundaries. Everything that you use, however, in the end is just a tool to get you there. If you do not know how to use your tools properly and get into that better space, it's all pointless. Because the point is not the tools, the point is what they do for you, which is get you in a better mental, emotional, and spiritual state to have healthy spiritual boundaries and a healthy spiritual hygiene. I believe we did a show specifically on
spiritual hygiene. We did, yes.
Spiritual hygiene a little bit back. So if you want to know more about the way I clean my energy and do cleansing work, refer to that one.
There we go. Let's see. Alexi Austin is asking, in shamanism, do you ever do any kind of shadow work or help others with their shadow work in your healing?
Constantly.
Yes.
Constantly. For the shaman, shadow work takes place in non-ordinary reality. When we go to our teacher spirits, and we go to them with, particularly in core shamanism, I don't know how other traditions deal with it, but the way I was taught is that if you have an issue that you don't know where it's coming from, and you don't know what needs to be healed, and you don't know what the hell you're doing, you go to your teachers and you pose them that question, or to your power animal. And sometimes that power animal or that teacher spirit or the helper spirit brings up that mirror and starts showing us the role that we have to play in bringing us to this space, and how that is part of who we are that we need to heal, or that we need to bring into the light to actualize as a life lesson. For me, shadow work as a shaman and a shamanic practitioner, as a shamanic practitioner and a shamanic healer, takes the form of going to my helper spirits and going, guys, what the hell did just happen?
Right.
How can I fix this? What's going on? And most of the time, it turns out that it began with me in a way in which I did not know or expect, because it was in that back of your mind shadow space that we don't want to deal with those parts of ourselves.
Well, and sometimes it's hard to see it when see what's occurring when you're living it at the same time. It just, sometimes you just need, like you say, that mirror put up there.
That's why people come to me for bone throwing most of the time, or for card readings. It's because they're going through so much and they're in the middle of it that they need to see they need somebody else's perspective.
Right.
That's what a person who's really good at divination should be seen for. Too many people think that it's because they want to, because we'll tell you your future, or because we'll tell you, well, because we'll fix all your problems for you and make your decisions, and that's not the case. A seasoned reader and psychic and healer will simply help you bring forth the realizations that are hidden within, and give you perspective for you to make more educated decisions.
I would imagine there's a huge percentage of the people you see, though, probably more walk-in clients than repeat, but that they refuse to see what you're saying, and then it becomes a thing, right?
Well, with them, 99% of them come back to me much later. Like a couple of weeks later, a month later, 2-3 months later. And Roman, I violently disagreed with what you said at that reading. Then life kept happening, and I felt incredibly called out by what you said.
Right.
So most of them come back for another reading, and the ones that don't find a quote unquote reader that won't call them out on their crap, and they will simply tell them what they want to hear.
Right. Interesting. Oh, thank you, Seth. Seth is posting the shows in the chat there for people to go look at.
Thank you.
You're
thank
welcome.
You, Seth.
The thought was there, but it's not working. Like, you can click on it, but it's not taking us there. So I'm still working on it.
Oh, okay.
But if I can't get this to work, and Wendy can't, you could just go to YouTube and look up Mystic Moon Cafe and then press in my name. Yeah, and then everything will come up.
Right. Or past events on the Facebook page.
Yep, that's the other way to do it.
Okay. Alexi is asking, have you ever come across someone in your reading that you or your guides or power animal has indicated they should be doing shaman work or some other kind of energetic workings?
Once. I came across this very beautiful soul who was transgendered.
Okay.
And this transgendered individual, and I'm not going to go any more deeper than details to respect the reading. There is traditions within Native American people, not only in the United States, but all over the Americas, that hold people who are either gay or transgender sacred, because they believe that that's a connection to more than one part of yourself. That you, spiritually speaking, are literally both male and female at the same time.
You are the yin and the yang.
Both in one being, fully embodied. Most of us hold the yin or the yang outwardly and the other one inwardly as a shadow or as it's the animus or anima of Freudian psychoanalysis, the inner god or the inner goddess. People who are naturally projective and masculine have an inner goddess. People who are naturally receptive and feminine have an inner god. What happens with people who are not in the cisgender spectrum of sexuality, people who identify as anything other, they tend to deal with those energies and embody them differently. And a lot of spiritual traditions around the world, especially in the Americas, have seen them as sacred and have always trained them to be medicine people. And I've came across one individual who had this incredible pull towards learning healing work, and they did not understand why. That they wanted to be healers. They thought about several different professions where they could literally become a professional healer in many different respects, including the traditional medicine. And the spirits came through and they go, well, it's because that's what you embody. You embody a spirit that is traditionally in the world held as a sacred healer.
Wow. Very nice.
Beyond that it's rare. People sometimes do express the calling, but somebody who's literally have a traditional call to a shamanic path is quite rare.
Interesting. What else should we be talking about then? Have we we've covered a lot of the ancestral and shamanic healing, but have you said everything that you had intended? Have we covered all the bases? I think
Truthfully, I had no idea what I was going to talk about here.
I'm sorry, that happens.
I came in blank and be willing to talk about whatever within the shamanic spectrum you guys wanted to cover, especially within the techniques and divination. We talk a lot about shamanic healing. We haven't talked a lot about divination. So if you have questions about shamanic divination, feel free to put them forth.
Well, I do have a question about soul retrieval. Is that something somebody can do on their own, or is it best to work with a shaman?
Oh God, no. Thank you for asking that question. Doing soul retrieval is one of the pinnacles of shamanic healing. That, along with the shamanic depossession, which somebody has a spirit attachment that needs to be released. They are the two most difficult things to do. To do soul retrieval on yourself is like deciding that you're going to do brain surgery on yourself because you learned it in a pamphlet that you find wet in a street corner like yesterday. It is a bad idea. I have seen it in books that says, follow this guided meditation and you'll do your own soul retrieval. Or in the internet, do this candle spell and call back pieces of your soul on your own and they'll come back to you. Or even worse, on YouTube, see this YouTube video that guide you through a soul. No, bad idea. The perfect example of why it's a bad idea is the people who fragmented because, let's say, of an abusive situation. When you get your soul pieces back, or when you're doing that meditation, you're going to come face to face with the exact moment you were abused. And you're going to watch yourself be abused over and over and over and over again. And that is going to lead to more fragmentation, not to more healing. Soul retrieval should always be done by someone who's trained on it and experienced, be it a shaman, a shamanic practitioner and healer, or even a priest or a priestess of a magical tradition. I have met a priesthood within the Wiccan tradition that was trained in soul retrieval, and they were amazing at it. So yeah, you need to work with someone who knows what they're doing, because not only is it dangerous because of the very nature of the wound that you're bringing back a wounded piece of yourself, but soul retrieval involves dealing with the spirit world. And unlike practices like Wicca, when we are taught that the world is a safe place and we live in a safe universe and God and Goddess will protect us. In shamanism, we are protected by the grace of our helper spirits and by our teachers and our power animals. And they tell us how to do the work and how to do it safely. If you do not have that powerful lifelong relationship with your helper spirits and your teachers in our ordinary reality and your helper spirits, you're not going to have their protection because you don't even know who they are. And even if you do, it is a bad idea to do it on yourself. You need help.
Absolutely. My mind wants to put it on the same level as kids going in and using a Ouija board. And you never know what's coming back through. But give me something, Seth.
So
Yep, there we go.
divination. Let's work on that now. I'm not sure what to ask on that. What is your, because so some of the things you use, you said tarot, right? And bones, and what else?
I do several different types of shamanic divination. Some of them are to the public, some only for my friends and family. A good example that is a traditional form of shamanic divination that I use with my clients is a form of power animal reading. I have a set of cards that have pictures of power animals. And when they ask their question, they draw a card from the deck and it says, well, this is a power animal that wants to answer your question. And I put it on the table, I turn off the lights and I rattle and I go into trance. And through that trance, I connect to the power animal in the card. And the power animal comes to life for me and begins to give me the wisdom that that person needs. That is something that I learned from the Foundation for Shamanic Studies. And it's an interesting form of shamanic divination that was traditionally used by people who worked with cave paintings. Because a lot of those cave paintings were shamanically imbued with power.
Sure, that makes sense.
And when shamans got into their space and into where those cave paintings are, with the flickering of the flame that naturally puts you into trance, and the sound of the rattle and the singing that they do, a lot of these cave paintings came to life for them and they began to give them guidance. So that is one form of shaman divination that I offer. The casting of the bones is cross-cultural from many different traditions. Siberian shamans were known to take the scapulas, the shoulder blades of the reindeer that they hunted, and thrown them into the fires, into their bonfires. And when they cracked and burned, they read the way they cracked. I believe there's a Chinese practice that they did that with tortoises, turtle shells.
Oh.
The Aztec people, my ancestors, used to take the knuckle bones of their sacrificial victims and cast them at the feet of the people who they were reading for and divine that way. The Sangoma people of Africa do something similar with bones and curious and cast them at the feet of the person that they're reading for.
Interesting. The power animal card deck, is it a tarot or is it what are the other ones?
It was marketed as a tarot,
okay.
But it did not have the traditional structure of a tarot deck.
Okay.
And I forgot what it's called. I think it's
oracle cards maybe instead, or no? Okay.
No, I don't remember what it's called.
Oh. Interesting. Cool.
I think something called like the spirit animal or tarot or something like that. I don't know.
Okay.
I forgot.
Okay, that's okay. I was just curious. Does singing bring divination?
Well, shamanic singing, it's a very old tradition. And some traditions around the world, they get passed down the generations from one teacher to another. In Brujería and Curanderismo, it's not just the singing, but prayers that get passed down the generations. I know at least one of my grandmother's prayers that she passed on to me to begin my journey. Shamanic singing, the way I was taught in the Foundation for Shamanic Studies, it's not necessarily what we say that is important. I tell my clients when I'm about to sing for them, the song might be English, it might be Spanish, or it might be gibberish. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you hear. What matters is the energy that the song conveys. It is
the tune itself.
Not the tune at all. Nothing of the song itself matters, but the energy that is being created by it.
Interesting. I'm sorry, I just somehow equated the energy finding its own tune and wavelength to talk to you or the person you're reading for.
Yeah, no. No,
Okay.
it's literally purely energetic, not even vibrational in the way of sound healing.
Okay. Okay.
It's purely energetic, and it's a shamanic practice. That the singing is when we merge with our helper spirits. We become at one with them, and it is they that they sing through our voice, and it is they that they pass on their energy and their healing through the voice that we're doing. Traditionally is done in two particular situations: to prepare someone for a healing, and then after the healing to help them integrate it.
Okay.
To begin the process of them integrating the healing later in their own way.
Neat. Cindy has a question. What's the best advice for how people can listen to their own divination?
I have to go check on my dog. I'll be right back.
Okay.
The best way to listen to your own divination: do not rely on your own intuition, because that's what we question the most.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot listen to your own intuition, most of us, because of our own ego getting in the way. Talk to your spirit guides. Talk to those who guide your path spiritually. You know, talk to God, talk to goddess, talk to a saint, talk to a bodhisattva, talk to divinity. Divination is inherently working with the essence of the divine to bring knowledge and to bring healing. That's what it literally means. It comes from the word divine, divination. So if you want to have divination that you can get out of the way, then don't run the divination yourself. Allow divinity itself to run the divination. Make it an ecstatic practice. When you have a moment of ecstasy, of unity with the divine, and you have a slight moment of revelation, even it doesn't matter how tiny and small or insignificant it seems, that is a seed that is going to be planted within your soul that will eventually grow to the full-blown transformation that you need. For people who want to read for themselves, make it not about what you think you know or what you get through your own intuition. Intuition is good for beginners. It's good for people who are just getting started in their path and they're navigating through their intuition. Use your psychic gifts to connect to something larger than you, something more powerful. And be careful who you choose, because only there are spirits in the spirit world and ordinary reality who have your highest good in mind, who are beings of light, who are teachers and helpers and power animals, but there are amoral spirits who have their own agenda.
Sure.
So be careful who you choose. One of the ways my teachers always taught me is that if you have a vision of a spirit, let's say that you're in a trance and however you induced it to go into the spirit world and talk to them, and your spirit that you're talking to looks like they're wearing a mask, like their face is not theirs. Ask them to remove it and show them their true self to you. If they refuse, get away from them fast and quickly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sick your power animal on them. That was a good explanation. Does the species of the power animal correlate to the kinds of insight they give? Or can each species give insight on any topic?
Each species can give insight into any topic, but when you're learning to connect with your power animal, when you're learning to have a relationship with them, it does pay off to look at the habits of the species and how they live and what they do. Because power animals, most of them never had a real life in the real world.
Okay.
They live through the people that they're connected to. So when you take into consideration what they would have liked to do if they were alive, it helps. But a lot of power animals will have lessons that are just for you. That is not something that is overall general. There are a lot of like oracle decks and books that tell you, if you see an eagle, you need a greater level of perspective, to see things from above. But that not necessarily be the case. It could be that eagle has a lesson that is exclusively yours, that only eagle can teach you. And that is true of all power animals. Your power animal is here to teach you specific lessons just for you in this lifetime. And sometimes those lessons change and your power animal leaves and another one comes. That happens.
I've heard of that.
But with power animals, it is not so much, in my experience, about the general idea of the animal, but with the lesson that they have exclusively for you. Now, when you see an animal in nature that is not your power animal, but you keep seeing it, it could be that they have a message for you that is more connected to their species. But that
The
is
owl may have the wisdom for you, or
precisely.
something like that, right?
Yes, precisely. But that's not necessarily the same thing as your own power animal.
Right. Okay, Cindy, what's your experience with spiritual instruments? Instruments that share a story that touches one's soul.
In shamanic healing, a lot of times traditional shamans will have their own instruments, their drum, their rattle, their healing stones, the things that they use to mix herbs for their patients or whatever. In some traditions, they are buried or even burned when they died. In some traditions, they get passed along. I had this very beautiful experience several years ago when I was first getting started doing shamanism to the public again. And I was at a retreat, at a Reiki retreat with one of the local Reiki teachers that she puts an annual retreat for all her students when COVID's not going on around. And she's a good friend of mine. I've known her for several years in the Reiki community. And this lady came on in who was an elderly lady, and she was a traditional Andean shaman. She worked in the traditional way of like people who live in like Peru and those areas of the world. You know, with the despacho ceremonies and everything. And she was very elderly and she was basically retiring. And she looked at me after having a session with me and she goes, I'm on my way out.
Oh.
I'm on my way out and I know it, you know, and time is short for me. And I've done my work. I spent decades doing the work, but you're just getting started. And she gave me a piece of pottery that belonged to the burial pot of a traditional Andean shaman that she had gotten from her teacher, who had it in his mesa on his table for decades and so forth, many generations. And she had permission from the government to have it. And she gave it to me and said, you know, this is my gift to you now that you're starting your own path. Wow. And it does happen that way.
Wow, that is incredibly beautiful.
Sometimes they do get passed down the generations.
But sometimes the line runs out too. Were you, can I ask, were you in South America at that time, or was she up here?
She was up here.
Okay. All right, don't have, Seth, got a question?
I just, I don't know if it's time for the final question. I had like a final question. We could ask it now.
We're getting close. I think we got, what, 10 minutes left?
If you could give one piece of advice to someone who is starting out on a quest for their passion, what would it be?
Oh, that is a very good question.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thanks.
Start out on their passion. Always remember to follow your own heart. Right now in the world, there are way too many people with way too many opinions about the path that we should be on, instead of allowing ourselves to allow our path to unfold before our own feet. Do not allow the words of others dictate who or what you should be. I had an interaction with a priestess in which the priestess was fully embodying the aspect of the goddess Hecate. And I asked Hecate for wisdom in my spiritual path, now that I was starting a new path, seeking the initiatory path within Wicca. And she looked at me, and among the many things she said to me that night by the bonfire was, there are going to be days in your life in which you don't know the path ahead. All you know is where you want to go, and you will not see the floor beneath you, but you need to keep putting one step before the other, having faith that I will put solid ground beneath your feet. That advice that she gave me that day is the best advice that I can pass on to anyone else, because you are not going to see the way in which you are becoming this beautiful thing that you're trying to be, or this passion you're trying to birth. All the thing that you're going to be able to see is your next step, and sometimes not even that. But you have to keep walking, you have to keep going, because it's not always it's not always that clear, and it's not always that easy. Sometimes you do have to do it by faith and with faith.
Very good answer.
Yes, thank you.
Sure. That just reminds me of like my parents thinking they knew that what they told me they wanted for me was what would be best for me. And then moving away from that, finally going, I'm sorry, but no.
Yeah, that does happen in a lot of families.
Yes, it does.
Where doctors or lawyers, and they already have it set like this, you have to keep doing what our generation's been doing, but they don't always, that's not always their purpose.
Right.
So.
Cindy says, let it blossom. And yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Grow and become your own beautiful path. And even if you have to close your eyes and take that leap of faith, do it. Just put that next foot forward.
Well, in tarot, and we've been talking about tarot,
mm-hmm.
It is embodying the energy of the first card of the tarot, the Fool. The Fool is normally depicted as a young man with a dog by his side trying to tell him he's in danger, barking, barking, barking. And he's dancing literally at the edge of an abyss, at the edge of a cliff.
Mm-hmm.
And people normally interpret a lot of that as being foolish and making foolish choices by not looking at the dangers in the path. But in the tarot, the Fool has a duality. In tarot, the Fool goes through each of the 22 cards of the major arcanum, the major spiritual life experiences and lessons that we all need to go through to be fulfilled and whole-rounded adults. And when he gets to card 22, to the card known as the World, he loops back around to card number 0 and becomes the Fool again. And then the Fool is not the Fool that makes foolish choices because he's young and naive, but he is the cosmic Fool dancing at the edge of the abyss because he has leapt into it and he knows what awaits him there. He knows the lessons that he has lived and he's ready to live them once again through a different perspective.
Once again, that was very beautifully stated, Roman.
I use that spiel in my readings a lot.
Spiel, yes. It sounds very mysterious and shamanistic. Well done.
That's awesome.
Yep. Okay, so shall we go through and tell people how they can get a hold of you again and what you may have coming up?
This coming Saturday,
mm-hmm.
I'm going to be presenting as part of Seattle Psychics Association Spirit Spa, which is just a series of psychics who are part of the association. And we're giving little half-an-hour talks.
Oh, nice.
From noon to 4 p.m. Pacific time. My half-an-hour talk is called The Wounded Soul and Manifestation. So a lot of these soul level wounds that we talk about not only today, but on the soul level wounds show that we did here, we're going to be talking about how that affects your ability to manifest. And every other reader is going to share a different talk on their area of expertise. And we will finish with a roundtable where you can ask us questions.
Nice.
Now, for getting a hold of me, I work at Mystic Sanctuary for my in-person work only. No phone readings or anything like that. In University Place, Washington. Their phone number is 253-302-3563. So if you're ever in University Place and want to work with me, I am there on Wednesdays and Fridays. And you can call them to make an appointment at that number. if you want to work with me long distance, or if you have questions about any of the things I spoke about here today, or work that you want to do with me, my website is the best way to get a hold of me, because it has that contact us form that will send me an email.
Mm-hmm. I think I've still got that queued up. No, I don't.
What was it?
Tio Tonali. Did I say that right?
Oh, okay.
TEOTLTONALI.com. Teotltonali.com.
Okay.
I hope I spelled that right.
I think you did. Yeah. Cindy's saying, Roman, your presentations are mesmerizing as always. You are amazing.
Aw,
Awesome.
that's sweet. Tell her
Mhm.
thank you. Thank you.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Cindy. All righty. Now, the thing you're doing Saturday, is that an online event or an in-person event?
It's an online event, and
Okay.
it's through the Seattle Psychics Association Facebook
Okay.
page. It's
All
going to be
right.
streamed live there on the 19th, Saturday the 19th,
Wonderful.
from noon to 4 p.m. Pacific time.
Noon to 4. Okay.
And we have those every month. So, and we have psychics there that work with us, and we are a worldwide reach. So anybody who's listening anywhere, if you want to work with a psychic, that's legit. We screen them, and we have a system of ethics for our clients and everything.
Oh, very good. Very good.
Everybody who works for SPA is going to be not only legit, but is going to be good at what they do.
Mm-hmm.
For our certified psychics. We have some of the best in our area working for us.
Oh, I've talked to, when you did your class the other day, the lady who was in doing tech for you. Yeah. She seemed to know her business and
Yeah.
very familiar with you. That was very nice.
For those who don't know, that was my Santa Muerte class.
Yes. Sorry.
Very soon, when we have the opportunity to redo the website, it's going to be available for purchase on the website.
Oh, very good. Okay.
But not quite yet. Just
one step at a time.
Step at a time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think we're about done then, unless you wanted to talk about something else. And I'm always open to listen. And I, like Cindy, it's mesmerizing and just so informational, and you're so knowledgeable, and your presentation is good. It's easy to understand.
Yes.
Well, at this point, I would just be talking about my personal experiences, not about the work.
Okay.
So I think this is a good place to.
Okay. Alrighty. All right then. Guys, Roman, thank you so very much. Seth, thank you as well.
Welcome. Thanks for asking me on.
Oh, anytime, all the time. Both of you, actually. Join me Wednesday. We'll have June and Jake will be on with me that day, and we'll be speaking with Becky Ray of Ghosts a Go-Go with Becky Ray, and she wrote the book Kansas City Hauntings, and it's about history and all of it. I haven't gotten the book yet. It was supposed to come yesterday, but it did not. So hopefully it'll get here. I know Jake has it as well. But yeah, it's going to be a great show. A different wavelength from this one, but it'll be good, no doubt. But all right, everybody, I hope you all have a good, safe week coming up, and we'll talk to you later.
Yeah, thank you. Bye, everybody.